Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Can I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Hello and welcome to episode 37 of PvA Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cory Barlog. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Also joining us this week, the Gus to my Sean, Larry Hunt.
You know that's right.
I texted you about the mug? Did you? Oh my Lord, we finally did it. So Larry, we're not really like gift givers, right? In our friendship. Right. But I don't remember the occasion that you bought these for us, but
well, my wife is a gift giver and I wanted one and she's like, Luke would like one too. We'll be honest with you. This was not my idea.
so you weren't
his world.
So you weren't being thoughtful at all. I understand.
I thought she bought me 3 of them and I was like, sweet.
Also,
but she only bought me 2.
Scuff streamer, I had the wrong overlay up. We're good now. Anyway, this is PvA Radio. We thank you guys for tuning in over here live on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. This is a weekly show where we get together. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week, and then we have an in-depth discussion about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article, or your CAFA, if you will. And Larry, what do we ask people to do with that?
Tattoo it to their foreheads.
Yes, please. If you can't catch us live over here, you can find us on podcast services everywhere, including Spotify and the new Luminosity, which is a new podcast service that just came out that we automatically got indexed into. So thanks a lot, Luminosity. Or you can catch us over on youtube.com/PvA Radio. Wherever you're listening to us, though, we certainly appreciate it. Drop us a follow, leave a review, leave a comment, and we would love to hear from you. So, guys, let's jump right into it. I got some housekeeping. You'll notice that tonight is not Monday night, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
You are correct.
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Well, the reason for that is because we now have a new time. Wednesday is at 9:30 Eastern. So that's when we're going to do the show live, and then it'll be available in all of your on-demand stuff come Thursday morning. So we did this for a couple reasons. First of all, I think the schedule just works out better for all 3 of us, really. And we won't get into all the dirty details of why, but the schedule just works better. And then secondly, we like to talk about gaming news. Not a lot of gaming news breaks on Mondays. And so we were talking about a lot of like 4 or 5, 6 day old news by the time we got around to actually doing the podcast. So this way we can talk about more relevant things. So, which doesn't really come to bear this week because there just wasn't a lot of great gaming news. Whereas last week we were like packed to the brim, but, I think we're still going to have a good time this week. So yeah, 9:30 Eastern time over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio on Wednesday nights. And then you can find us everywhere else on Thursday mornings. Also, we're reopening PVAQ. Not that we ever really closed it. We just haven't really been pushing it very much. But PVAQ is where you can go to playerversusall.com/PVAQ, read up about all the information, find out where to follow us. But there's also a form there where you can submit questions to the podcast. Now, if you're watching live over on Twitch with us, feel free to chat along. We're going to try to, interact with the chat more as we're talking about video games. But then if you want to submit a question for us to maybe build a topic around or have a little bit longer discussion than just dropping a question in the chat, you can submit that to playerversusall.com/PVAQ. If you do that and your question is selected, you get entered in for a chance to win a $20 PSN, Xbox Live, Steam, or Nintendo eShop gift card. And we'll give those away every single month. So anyway, that is all the housekeeping that I have. Also, I do want to mention we have a Discord, and we want to start trying to populate that Discord with people who listen to the show. So if you're over watching us on Twitch, you can just type !Discord in the chat and it'll give you the link. And then if you're listening on podcast services or over on YouTube, you can find the link in the description. Okay, I'm done. done with all the housekeeping, guys. Let's talk about video games, which is why we are here. And let's specifically talk about what have you been playing. Cody, let's start with you this week. What have you been playing?
Honestly, not that much. Because I went home this weekend, and I didn't have a console there, I wasn't playing much over the weekend, but I did bring my Switch. And so I was playing a little bit of Skyrim on the Switch because I haven't played enough Skyrim on every other console out there. I'm trying to think. I tried to get back into Celeste because I had never beaten it. I think it just fell by the wayside when other things came out, so I was working my way through that as well. But it was a pretty gaming light week for me.
Dude, I would say Skyrim and Celeste are two bangers of games. That's not a light gaming week at all.
They are. I just didn't play much of either of them.
Okay, so we're just talking volume, not quality. I love Celeste. Yeah.
I do too. It's awesome.
I'm not a huge fan of like difficult games, but Celeste like just does such a great job of throwing you right back in after your failure that it just kept its hooks in me. So, and
it's really encouraging too. It'll give you like kind of encouraging messages in the loading screens and stuff. I love it.
And the story's great.
Yeah. The themes are absolutely touching and incredible.
All right, Larry, what have you been playing?
All I play is Apex Legends.
Pro Apex player here.
Pro gamer.
You and I, we had a couple of really fun matches this past week. I cut a clip out for my own enjoyment. I screen capped a clip where you said that if we win this game, Larry, you will be a god. So I've just got I've got a record of it if I ever need it. but we had a match where Luke immediately got killed, and I spent the whole match running from basically the same team and respawning him over and over again, and then we won the match.
Wow.
I got the final kill.
It's true.
Ironically enough.
The final kill.
Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I have such a love-hate relationship with that game, and we're talking like 20-80, right? 20 love, 80 hate. Because you have those moments where like it's intense and you actually prevail and it's awesome, but then you have so many times where it's just like, all right, you're gonna spend 10 minutes looting here and then stand on top of a roof and just hope that nobody comes up behind me or anything like that. So, but that night was certainly a fun night because we had back-to-back wins, and who doesn't love winning, right?
Winning.
Yeah. So. Let's see, what have I been playing? I have been continuing my playthrough of Diablo 3, and I'm loving it, man. It's such a perfect Switch game just, I don't have a clue what's going on in the game, like from a narrative perspective, because I'm playing it while I'm like watching watching reruns of Game of Thrones, or like, just sitting in the living room with my wife while she watches whatever on TV. So like, I'm not super paying attention to the story, but the game does such a wonderful job of just like giving you small victories and making you feel incrementally more powerful. Like, I just think it does the loot grind as well as any game like that I've ever played. So
it was the OG loot grind.
I was about to say, I know I'm not saying anything new, but I'm used to like Destiny and stuff like that, where it's just it seems the grind seems super pointless, and in order to get anything of real note, you have to like go through this 10-step process in order to achieve it. Whereas I think Diablo is a lot more like instant gratification. And I've also realized like some of these quests are ridiculously long.
Yeah.
Because I'll be like, all right, I'm going to stop after this quest, and then like 45 minutes later, I'm like, I'm still doing this thing. Like, there's different parts, but the areas are really big. The story, the quests are really long. Like, so it's got its hooks in me. Any spare moment I get to pick up my Switch, I've been playing it. Also been playing PC Overwatch, and I am terrible at it. I went on an 11 game losing streak this week, and that was it was painful, with a mixture of like levers and just people being super toxic. Like, the PC community, man, it makes me miss just playing on console all the time. But they
must be bad.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But then as far as like new games, I picked up Katana Zero, which is a Devolver Digital game. And and it's like a 2D side-scrolling, sort of like a beat 'em up, but it's like less forgiving than a beat 'em up. So the premise of the game is like you are this ninja or samurai person who is a contract killer, and you go into these levels where you have a mark that you've got to kill, and as you're going through the levels, you can't take a single hit or you die. So you have a mixture of different abilities. You can like slow down time, you can deflect bullets, you can like flash dodge through different damage, but you can't take any damage at all, or it sends you back to the beginning of that level. And I'm enjoying it so far. I think I'm about 7 or 8 levels in, and it's classic Devolver, just like really grueling, kind of punishing. You have to be really thoughtful about how you plan your engagement, because everything just happens in kind of a split second. If you played any like Hotline Miami, I think you'll really connect with it. It's not top down like Hotline Miami. It is a side scroller, but the challenge level and just the way the mechanics kind of play with one another reminds me a ton of Hotline Miami. So I'm having a really good time with it. I'll probably end up beating it this weekend because I've heard it's also really short.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into it. It's the next on my list.
All right, sweet. All right, well let's jump into it. Let's jump into our topics. I don't have any follow-ups from stories from last week, so go ahead.
Can I interject a thing?
Absolutely.
It's not really follow-up, but I just want to know. I just saw this right before we started streaming. So have you seen this Overwatch thing just dropped where you can like make custom games?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. Fill me in while I open up my door so I don't die of heat stroke.
I didn't see that far, but I saw that the thing that fascinated me was I saw a guy made a Hammond racing course. So you just have a bunch of balls rolling through this course. So I'm real excited about that. Like that's something that will hook me back into Overwatch, because Luke remembers from the Halo days that like I am just a sucker for ridiculous custom games.
There's always been like a certain level of custom games on Overwatch. Like you can play with like gravity and different like rule sets on the map and stuff, but they haven't opened it up to the level that you seem to be talking about them opening it up to. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Like I said, I just saw it before we got on, so I don't know anything detail wise. That's just my glimpse of it.
And then the whole idea of like making custom characters is really cool too. My wife has unleashed the beast. The animals were all in the room with her, and she can't go to sleep like that. So
I hope that custom character thing is true, because we can finally see them make Genji heal.
It'll be awesome. I hope they get like you can make Roadhog have the blink ability.
That's what he's been missing.
Yeah, all along. That's really cool. I think that Overwatch over the last 3 or 4 months has really figured out like if we're gonna make this game work even more long term, it's gonna require like heavy involvement from the community. So they've been like leaning more heavily into utilizing their PTR, taking feedback from the audience and trying it out on the PTR, even if it doesn't make it to a live patch. Like, so to see them do something like this where they can kind of say like, okay, you guys go in, we're going to give you a sandbox to just completely lose your mind and break our game. That's really cool to me. I'm looking forward to that. Well, if we're just going to drop random things in here, which I'm totally fine with, I wanted to bring up, have you guys seen the rumor about the cheaper Nintendo Switch that may be coming this summer?
Yeah,
and potentially a more powerful one as well, right?
Yeah, like I think it was a modest upgrade was how it was described.
Yeah.
Which sold, baby. Modest upgrade. Sign me
I hadn't
up.
seen I hadn't seen that. Is it that there's a smaller one and a more powerful one, or a smaller, slightly more powerful one?
No, I think those are two separate things.
Two separate things,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And so, and there's been rumors about a cheaper option for the Switch in the past, and like you have to imagine it's going to be things like it's not going to have a dock. It's just going to be like handheld only. Like get rid of the detachable Joy-Cons and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting, and you know, reading like some comment sections because I like to punish myself from time to time.
Discourse.
Yeah. The number of people that are like, we don't want this. We want something that's like a 1080p handheld, like yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, Nintendo is not so much concerned about you buying another Switch. They want people who have been on the fence about buying a Switch to buy a Switch. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. All right, guys, let's get into our topics now. Since that segment right there became something it's never been before.
Experimentation, baby.
Hey.
Keep it fresh.
All right, let's talk about Halo Infinite in Battle Royale mode. So the details of this come from an article over on PCGamer.com written by Fraser Brown. I'm not going to read it. I have it up here for people to see if you're watching the video. But I'm just going to run you through some stuff that's outlined here. So if you don't remember, I think it was near the beginning of when we started doing PvA radio, there were rumors going around that, or maybe not rumors, more speculation going around that Halo Infinite was going to have a battle royale. You know, it was at the height of like Fortnite's popularity, and everybody was like, Call of Duty had just announced their implementation of a battle royale, so people were putting battle royales and everything, right? To which lead writer for the Halo franchise, Jeff Easterling, said, quote, "I'll tell you right now, the only BR we're really interested in is the battle rifle," end quote.
Amen, brother.
Well, the battle royale conversation reared its head yet again last week when a report from Brad Sams, who, where the fuck has Brad Sams come from? I feel like we have talked about him for the last, like, he was the guy who did the Scarlet rumors. There was another rumor just recently, and maybe it was about more Xbox hardware stuff, that he was like the guy bringing it forward. And now here he is saying, oh, Halo, the Halo team is in fact working on a battle royale game. So he puts out this report, and then Halo director Frank O'Connor goes over onto Reset Era and gives us this little quote. He says, quote, "We will not talk about the launch content of Halo Infinite until we're ready. I haven't watched the video, so if I am misinterpreting the headline as Halo Infinite is launching with / as a Halo Battle Royale mode, that is still not the case. You can probably make your own Battle Royale mode in Forge even right now, though," end quote. So to me, that response is a little like cagey of, you know, we're not going to have a battle royale at launch. But I don't know how you guys read this, but to me it comes out as like, hey, we could still have a battle royale at some point in Halo, right?
Yeah, he's not outright denying that it will ever have a battle royale. His wording is very careful to not outright just deny that there won't be a battle royale in this game at any point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't as firm as the only BR you'll see in Halo is the battle rifle.
Absolutely. And then in a weird like twist, never before seen twist, the gaming community got their panties in just a huge wad about this.
How uncharacteristic.
Yeah, seriously. The gaming community gets unreasonably upset about a decision that a developer maybe or may not be making? What? In the conversation revolving around the idea, does Halo need to add a battle royale, or should Halo add a battle royale? And I think that that's a conversation worth us having here. We're all three Halo fans on some sort of level. And so I guess we can kind of start there and expand out, because I want this to be a little bit broader than just talking about Halo. But is this something you would personally like to see? Would this personally like change the way that you feel about the Halo franchise if they were to add something like this? Does it have a place like fitting into the Halo universe at all? So just kind of give your thoughts about whether or not this is something that should be in the game.
So I have absolutely zero interest in ever seeing this in a Halo game, and will play the crap out of it if they ever put it in. So like I don't think Halo needs it. But also I'm not in the boat that it like this would kill Halo. This would not be real Halo if it's got a battle royale mode. And you know, I can't fault 343 for considering it if they are. Just like these things are blowing up and having that game mode. If they can do it, why not? If you can put in Forge right now. I mean, let's be honest, the way the last few Halo games have gone, if you can make it in Forge, it's going to be a main thing in the game at some point anyway.
Yeah, looking at you, Halo 4 especially.
Gosh, yeah. So for me, like, this is just like a little blip on the radar. It doesn't move me emotionally one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Halo needs it, but it wouldn't. It's not one of those things. Like a single multiplayer mode isn't the kind of thing that will completely kill a game for me, because I can opt in or opt out of playing that mode. Especially like that's the whole appeal of Halo. Like I would be attracted to and kind of play the modes that I liked and kind of drift away from the other ones, and they would have playlists for those modes, so I would be able to kind of pick and choose my Halo experience. That's always been the appeal of Halo multiplayer to me.
Halo sorry.
No, go ahead.
It just stands apart in the variety of game modes that it offers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a large part of the reason I think the multiplayer has been so successful. So yeah, I don't think it wouldn't kill the experience for me. And I also can't fault them for wanting to put it on. I'm sure like most of the guys working on that game are fans of Battle Royale. It's kind of like what you heard with the Apex team. Like they loved those kinds of games and they wanted to put their own spin on it. So it's hard to fault them for it. Does Halo need it? I think it's an interesting question. Definitely one that we can talk about though.
Yeah. I think the conversation's interesting on the heels of another conversation that we were having a mere like 2 weeks ago around Sekiro, right? Where people were like, well, they should add this and that. And the response to that conversation was, let the developers make whatever game they feel like making. Who are you to say what they can and can't do? And like, I have to imagine that in the Venn diagram of the two responses, there is some form of overlap between the people saying that about Sekiro who are bitching about Halo possibly having a battle royale added into it. I think it's interesting if you kind of zoom out with Halo Infinite to the speculation about what that game as a whole is going to be, because it may be, you know, a fad on top of a fad, right? Where like Battle Royale has been like the hot genre for the last year and a half, 2 years. But if the speculation about what Halo Infinite is true, and it is this like shared world experience, then that's a fad that was, you know, the Destinies and the Divisions and the Anthems of the world, you know, these like loot shooters coming into it. And so I do think that there is room for a conversation to be had of like, does Halo run the risk of losing their identity? And again, this is kind of putting all of our eggs into like several speculation baskets, but does Halo run the risk of losing its identity by chasing after modes that they really didn't find their success in originally, and that may come across to some as like just chasing whatever the flavor of the month is?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think one that was kind of got levied against Apex before we kind of knew how good the game was. People just kind of assumed that Respawn was leaping on a trend, and then they played the game and they're like, oh, it's definitely a battle royale, and it has all the hallmarks of a battle royale, but it is a Respawn battle royale and has a lot of that DNA infused into it as well. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that a Halo battle royale could still encompass the Halo identity. I think there are inherent aspects of Halo that could provide for a very interesting battle royale experience. I do the one, and I think you kind of referenced it in your question, but the concern I do have is that it's a fad on a fad, especially as we've kind of seen like Anthem and Fallout 76 are both pretty failed entries in the kind of shared world live service kind of game. it's clearly a kind of game that takes a massive amount of work and a massive amount of dedication to pull off well. And I'm not necessarily doubting 343 in this case. It's just objectively a hard thing to pull off. So I do kind of wonder that, combined with a separate mode that people are still hypothesizing about, but a mode that also is difficult to pull off well and with a unique identity. Those two jammed together presents somewhat of a challenge for 343 that is clearly floundering for an identity with a franchise itself. All of that stuff together could potentially prove disastrous. But I think it could also prove extremely invigorating for the franchise. It's something that I'm super interested to see, because I think it's a very kind of risky, rewardy kind of deal.
And I still just go back to the variety of game modes that the series has been known for. And as long as they don't put a lot of eggs in this basket, if it's kind of like Call of Duty, where there's the separate game mode on top of an already existing game, I just don't see it as being that much of a risk to the identity of it. Because every entry of Halo comes with a new type of playing that often doesn't pan out. So like you had Spartan Ops with Reach, I think it was. A lot of people loved it, but a lot more didn't, and we never saw it again. For several entries now, you've had the surviving wave after wave of enemies type game types. Warzone, I'm not sure how popular Warzone was. I know that I personally was not a fan of it in the most recent entry.
Oh, you mean the please buy our rec packs game mode?
Yes, that's the one. But I could see Warzone being the game mode that they get rid of and sort of reshift into this Battle Royale experience where you're fighting players, but you also have actual Covenant enemies on the map, that kind of thing. And I think it could be interesting. So for me, it's just a game whose identity is tied up in a variety of ways of playing. And I guess I'm grappling with that may be part of the problem, right? But for me, I don't think this will put them in any worse position than they're already in as far as grappling for a solid identity.
Yeah. Go ahead, Cody.
I think the Warzone example is kind of interesting because that was in a lot of ways their attempt to reimagine the MOBA as a game variant in Halo. It had a lot of similarities to League of Legends, and I guess Heroes of the Storm wasn't really a thing at the time, but so it wouldn't be the first time that I guess 343 would try to reinterpret or kind of leap onto a pre-existing successful game type or genre. Warzone's not a great example to pull if you want to kind of argue if it'll be successful or not, but I think I liked Warzone for what it was.
I liked the game itself. It was just how buy our rec packs, like Luke said, it became. If you wanted to implementation consistently, you had to be shelling out real money.
Yeah, but I think Warzone is the perfect example in talking about how Halo's identity has always been a little bit in, finding what the next big thing is going to be. Like, even thinking back into the original Halo days and like online multiplayer arena shooter, like that wasn't a space that that Halo was like the founder of, right? Like they didn't invent that space, but they did it super, super well, and people fell in love with it.
And they did it well on console in a time where that actually was a rare thing.
Yeah. And so this idea that like, oh man, Halo is just campaign and Halo is online arena shooter, like, is misguided and totally misses the mark of all that history that you just did such a fine job laying out for us, Larry. Like, the Halo franchise has always tried to find its place in other spaces to varying levels of success, you can argue. But even in like the arena shooter space, they did, again, with varying degrees of success, make changes to the way the arena shooter worked. Whether that was the use of abilities in, what was that, Halo 4? that they
Reach
started in Reach,
had
yeah.
the first, yeah.
Yeah, and then what was it they added in Halo 4 that like it was like they did that and also had weapons on the map?
4 was where Spartan Ops started. I was mistaken earlier.
Okay.
But yeah, they also had there were weapons, but you could also earn ordnance drops.
That's right, ordnance drops. And then like
Kill streaks.
Halo 5, they really changed up the movement and the verticality of the game and the mobility in the game. Like, so even in the spaces where they have, a history and a legacy, they're constantly trying to continue to innovate in. So I don't agree with this idea that like Halo is this one thing and it has to be this one thing. But I think it is one of those franchises that to a lot of people, it is this one thing. Like to some people, Halo is all about the story. To some people, Halo is all about the split screen multiplayer. And to others, it's all about like the arena shooter. And so I'm not particularly interested in seeing Halo make a battle royale, but I also won't fault them or think that that's anywhere outside of their character to do those things, because they've shown that they are willing to do this kind of thing in their past.
Yeah. And I also just want to say that although there are those people who Halo is this one thing, their core audience is not those people, I don't think. The people who pick that game up and they stick with it for the life cycle of the game are the people who are all over the place on the game modes. And Halo has always been a game that caters to what that community wants to see, for better or for worse. Like their infection game mode started off in Halo 2 as something that people would just screw around on custom servers doing. You couldn't even like make it a rule type. It was just like you communicate in the lobby, hey, when the zombie kills you, switch to green team. And I think that was really the launching point for them, giving their player base so much freedom in creating game modes and creating maps. And like we've seen stuff like Griffball, it like dubbed as an actual game mode with an actual playlist. So if, I can imagine that after that, the only BR we're going to have is battle rifle quote. Maybe a lot of people are like, I'd like to see us be able to do that. And if enough people are interested, it wouldn't shock me for them to include that as well. Also, a big part of their identity has been give the community the freedom to play the game the way they want to play it.
So I had kind of like a second half to this topic planned out, but I don't think that it really fits with where the conversation's going. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little, because Cody, you mentioned something that I think is an important conversation to have, and that is, does Halo need Battle Royale? Or like, and I think that's such an important question because I think we are getting diminishing returns on Halo games that have released since probably even Halo 3, right? Since the debacle of Halo Master Chief Collection, definitely. So, and I think that we do run the risk of, and this is overstating a little bit, but I'm trying to make the point of like, of Halo kind of going into obscurity while their hardcore fan base just clutches its pearls and is incredibly toxic about any kind of change that they may make in the hopes of pulling new people into the fold. And like at the end of the day, sorry, my cat just jumped up here. At the end of the day, Halo is a franchise that's run by that's made by a company, that's run by a company, published by a company, and in order for these franchises to stay viable, they have to constantly refresh their fan base as fan bases get older, lose interest in gaming, lack the time for gaming. They need to figure out ways to pull people in. And I don't think saying like we're going to have an 8-hour campaign and arena shooter multiplayer is the way you're going to be able to do that moving forward. So I don't think Battle Royale necessarily is the thing that's going to, turn that ship around. But I do think that the fan base needs to give 343 the space to be able to make decisions like this in the hopes that they can pull new people in.
Yeah, it's like Nintendo. They're not trying to get you to buy another Switch. They want the guy who hasn't picked up the Switch to buy a Switch.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Like, although that fan base, the super loyal fan base, is who they mainly cater to historically, they do have to think outside the box and bring more people in. And now is the time to do that. just it's been a while since a mainline Halo game has been entered. I'm a student minister. I work with teenagers, and only a handful of the teenagers I work with have actually played a Halo game. So
that's wild, man. Because Halo was like the youth group game when I was growing up. Like, we all got the Xbox 360s together, had like a LAN party, and played when we got together. So yeah, that's wild to me. But all your kids that game, which are probably not many, they're all probably playing Fortnite, right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I gotta get this cat out of here. You keep going.
Well, oh no, I was at the end of what I was saying. Cody.
Well, no, I think you have a good point. It's also the perfect time because we're on the cusp of a next generation, where presumably Halo will not be coming out on this generation of consoles or this generation of Xbox.
Yeah.
And so I think it provides a perfect opportunity for it to kind of have the platform to itself should it launch within the first year or so of the next Xbox. I also think it's key to think that like there's most likely a reason that the team and publisher are considering Halo as a live service game. It's not just about bringing more people in. It's about getting those people and getting them to stay in the game and spend as much money as possible in the game. And I am under no illusions that is also like most likely a primary motivation for why the Microsoft would be interested in a live service Halo. I don't necessarily think that's the reason 343 is. I think it's a great way to kind of experiment with the idea of what a Halo game can be. And I'm with you guys. I think that the definition of like a Halo game and like the identity of Halo has always been in such flux. Although the foundation has stayed largely the same, I think if you look at each Halo game, there's definitely it has evolved the formula in some way. And I think this is, in my mind, perhaps the next evolution of that in a way that doesn't necessarily shed everything that Halo has been, but could be a platform in which they can build what Halo will be moving forward. Well,
and Bonnie Ross said almost exactly what you said at the beginning of that in her interview with IGN Unfiltered.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
She said, like, we can't just ship a green box and say, hey, we'll push content updates every couple months. Like, that model just doesn't work. And it's not that they don't want to do that. It's that in order to be a viable product with the kind of game that they're trying to create, you cannot do that without just spending 5 years on something, releasing it, and then it just being lost in the ether a month and a half after it comes out.
Exactly. It does, however, if that is what the next Halo game will be, fundamentally shift the story fans can come to expect from it, if that is the primary reason you're engaging with Halo. I think it's good news if you enjoy the world of Halo. Those kind of games are great at kind of showcasing the world in a way that a more linear pathed game might not necessarily be capable of doing. It won't have a live service game never has the singular focus. We've talked about this before. It's difficult to be the one when you're surrounded by a bunch of ones. But that's also been a huge appeal of Halo fiction largely. Not just Master Chief is a lone Spartan, but throughout Halo lore there are many Spartans. There are Spartan armies. So it could be interesting to kind of explore that, not necessarily lose all of what has made Halo Halo, or a Halo story a Halo story.
And story wise, this is a good time for that to happen. Sorry, Luke, I have to spoil the end of Halo 5 to make this point. But if you remember, it ends with the Guardians being launched out to attack the galaxy.
Yeah.
And Halo 5 was like, they were, with Reach, you see some other Spartans. With Halo 4, you see some other Spartans. But Halo 5 was really where they really began to expand out and give you extended interaction with, like, there are a lot of these guys out here now, the Spartan 3s. And it's just a great time for them to explore, like, all right, there's this whole galaxy now. There's a war happening on multiple fronts, and there are a bunch of these Spartans. Create your own and go join the fight. I think this is actually a really great time for them to make this transition if they're going to make it.
See, I was going to say now's the great time to make the transition because 343 has just proven that they can't keep a Halo story on the rails. Like the main criticism I've heard about Halo 5 is like, where do we go from here with the story? And so it may seem like a cop-out, but to create something that is more of like a shared world shooter experience where you're not as invested in this like singular linearly told story, and it's more just about the world, which has always been Halo's strong suit. Like, what perfect time to put lipstick on a little bit of a pig in that regard and say like, hey, we're just gonna, it'll be an afterthought and we'll just let you kind of create your own stories within this world. Like, I think it also complements when you zoom out and look at Halo as a property. They have the Halo television show coming to Showtime, which by default tells a very linear story, and is featuring Master Chief. So if that is the experience, the Halo experience you want, you can still experience Halo that way, and obviously play the Master Chief collection as they re-release it piecemeal on PC. I don't know. I think it would also be cool to like see Chief as like just a quest giver in Halo Infinite. I think that would be hilarious. He'd be the most mute and like straight and to the point quest giver ever, which could be pretty funny.
I can't see that happening.
I was gonna say,
It'd be hilarious.
I was gonna say, Larry takes issue with this. Cool. All right, guys. Well, we've that topic's gone a little long in the tooth. So, as the host, I'm going to keep this show moving. But,
Host it.
All right, Larry, what is your topic? What?
So, my topic, it was a slow news week. And this isn't directly related to any particular game, which is in part why I thought this was a good time to talk about it, because we can use some clear examples without ruining anything for anybody. But I want to talk about spoilers. So there's a lot of concern about spoilers right now in the entertainment industry. You've got some leaks coming out from Endgame. Game of Thrones is back on the air, so lots of anger towards spoilers there. As Star Wars approaches, I'm sure we'll have people concerned about spoilers on that front. But spoilers are something that I've had strong opinions on in the past, and my opinions have changed a little bit over the years. So I just want to talk about that a bit. Spoilers, we all know what that is. You've ruined the story for somebody.
Spoiled it, you might say.
Spoiled it. But to kick off the conversation, share with me some notable moments in gaming that have been spoiled for you. Have you ever had like the story of a game just ruined and it just really upset you? Or if not, you can give me another entertainment example.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of like any instance in the gaming world that's been spoiled for me, and I can't really think of one. I know there were several instances where something in The Walking Dead like was spoiled for me television wise. I don't really care enough about any movie franchises for anything to really be spoiled for me. But that being said, like, go ahead.
Han Solo, that was spoiled for you.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually a great example. I knew coming in here, like, I have a shit memory, so I knew coming in, I was like, I'm going to say I don't have anything, and Larry is going to remind me of something. So thank you for bailing me out,
There's the water
Larry.
cooler incident. Not a movie, but...
The water cooler incident?
Yeah, when you dumped some ice on a fella.
Oh, dude. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I remember your life for you.
Yes. Thank you. Larry is my three-eyed raven. he doesn't get that reference, but Cody does.
I do.
No. Okay. So, yeah, the Star Wars Force Awakens was spoiled for me. The Han Solo's fate was spoiled for me because at the time I was writing for Twinfinite, which meant I was constantly like on social media and Facebook groups and just perusing the landmine that is the internet. And this was like this was no joke. Like 8 hours after the movie came out, somebody posted a screenshot of that scene. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't care about Star Wars, but I mean, I care enough to watch the movies and like go see them pretty early on. But I was like, that's like a major plot point that I would rather not know that was coming. Like, to me, it's not that it ruins the story, it's that it ruins the experience of watching the movie, right? Like, I could care less what happens to Han Solo, right? But I want to know it in the time that it's supposed to be given to me. So, but no, the example you're talking about, Larry, I was at camp one year, and camp ran Sunday to Friday, and it was during the season finale of Game of Thrones. And this was...
Which season?
We're on 8 right now. I think this was season 5.
Okay.
It was the season when Tyrion Lannister's on trial.
Yeah.
And
the first time or the second time?
The poison time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The purple wedding.
Yes. So I'm at camp, and I'm talking about, like, man, I'm missing Game of Thrones. Like, I hate this. And one of the adult sponsors was like, oh, man, you're going to... And he wasn't doing it. I mean, he was, like, legit doing it just to be a dick. He was like, oh, so you're going to miss when Tyrion... Major plot point. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I did like Khal Drogo did to Daenerys' brother and just dumped a giant pot of not melting gold, but of ice cold water on his head. I just silently stood up. I didn't say anything. Picked up the water cooler, walked over to him, and just dumped it on him. And there were a couple people that got really upset about that response. But that was one of those, like...
felt like you were out of line. I was like, no, he wasn't.
But that was one where I was like, I am invested in this story. I really care about these characters. I do not want to know. Like, I'm not super sensitive to spoilers in that regard, except for things with, like, Game of Thrones. So, yeah, thank you for being my three-eyed raven, Larry.
You're welcome. Whatever that means.
You're the memory of the world. I can't think of a really notable time I've been spoiled. I'm actually really good at staying away from spoilers.
Don't worry, Larry will remind you of a time in your life that something was spoiled.
Okay.
So, Cody, remember back in 2012?
The movie 2012?
Oh, yeah. Well, that whole experience was getting spoiled. And but yeah, I'm pretty good at staying away from spoilers. I'm trying to think. There was a notable game where part of it got spoiled for me. And it may or may not be a part that we're going to be talking about in my section of this episode, so I don't want to say anything about it, but I usually just avoid spoilers by watching or going to see whatever it is that's getting spoiled as soon as it comes out. So there's no time for it to get spoiled for me. That's why I'm going to see Endgame this weekend.
Yep. I had the ending of Halo 3 spoiled for me. So the final cutscene leaked, and a friend of mine sent it to me directly. And I watched it because, like, at that point, like, those sorts of things just kind of, like, that's the first moment I remember, like, a cutscene from something being leaked on the internet. I just wasn't used to seeing that really happen. I thought it was some kind of joke. I watched the whole thing. The ship got cut in half. Master Chief got left behind. And I was like, that's weird. And I stopped there. Like, I didn't get to the point where he says, wake me when you need me. So I quit it with a little bit of uncertainty. Like, maybe it's like in the middle of the game and there's still more to come. But then I finished the game and I was like, well, crap, that sucks. All right. So we all agree spoilers suck. If you're invested in the story, it's an unfortunate thing to come across. So I'm just going to kind of vomit words here and let the conversation go where it may. But I want to talk about how we handle spoilers, both in terms of the different mediums that we consume. Because for me, gaming spoilers, book spoilers, movie, TV spoilers, like, there are different, like, approaches to those things as far as I'm concerned. But also in the different mediums where you interact with people, like, how do you avoid them? What's the proper protocol for showing concern for people? And what's the point where the people getting it spoiled are just kind of being unreasonable? So yeah, what are your personal spoiler policies, and what makes you angry in the spoiler realm?
So my thoughts on spoilers have really changed over the years and evolved over the years. My first rule is my rule in all things, and that is don't be a dick, right? So, like, if you know, like, for instance, the camp situation, right? Like, I'm clearly excited about watching this episode of this show. I clearly care about what's happening, and so don't go out of your way to spoil something for the sake of just spoiling something, right? But I used to be of the mind, right, that, like, social media, you need to keep your spoilers off of it. Don't go tweeting about this thing. Don't go putting stuff on Facebook about it. Like, we don't need any of these spoilers leaking into our social media experience. But the more I've thought about it, like, I fall more on the side of, like, there is a level of personal responsibility you have to take as a fan of something to stay away from it. Like Cody was saying earlier, like, if he really cares about something, he's going to make sure he's either attending it as it happens or watching it when it airs in debuts. Like, that is his way of staying away from. And if you miss those, I'm sure you're not, like, scrolling through Twitter reading anything that says Game of Thrones on it, right? Like,
yeah, I'm just staying away from it.
And I think I saw a tweet that really, like, and I don't remember who. I can't credit anybody because I don't remember exactly who posted it or even exactly what it said. But the concept in it really changed my mind of just, like, nobody bitches about spoilers for the Super Bowl. You know, like, here's this live event that people across the country get excited about, and everybody is live tweeting moment after moment what's going on in the Super Bowl. And so when I think about these things like Game of Thrones, this huge thing that's kind of entered into the zeitgeist, that everybody has the ability to watch all at the same time, then that becomes almost like a Super Bowl kind of idea. Like, we're all going to tweet about it together, and if you're DVRing the Super Bowl and don't want to know the final score, don't go on ESPN.com. Like, avoid the places where these conversations are going to happen. Like, Twitter is a medium for conversations to be happening in real time. My thoughts change a little bit when it comes to, like, movies and video games, right? Because movies, you're limited to showtime. Sometimes it's like a rolling national release where it releases at, like, 9 o'clock local time for every single time zone, things like that. Same thing with video games. And also just, like, and there's limited seating in movies. And with games, it's like, hey, I may not have the time to sit down and marathon through something for 14 hours to get to the ending. Like, I do think you should do, but, like, with a TV show where we've all got the same opportunity to watch it at the same time, like, I'm a little less sensitive now to those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the nature of spoilers has changed as the way we consume media has changed. I don't think, other than sports, there really is no, and Game of Thrones, there really is no, like, live habit viewing kind of experience on TV, or I think in TV, Game of Thrones is probably the last existing example of that, and in film, Marvel movies, Star Wars less so and less so, but Marvel movies are the exception to this. Like, other than that, you do DVR, or you watch it on demand, or you watch it on HBO Go, like, later that, maybe the next day, later that week, or you kind of just wait for them to pile up and then binge watch them all. So I think people have become a little bit more sensitive to spoilers because they don't consume media as the event occurs or as the episode airs, and so they just kind of people feel more lax about the way they consume media, except on Netflix, where you just kind of, like, devour something all at once.
Yeah.
So I think the bounds of when something can be spoiled have kind of expanded as kind of the distance between viewing and airing has kind of become greater. I still, like, even with that, I still think, like, just don't be an asshole about it. I think, unfortunately, that's largely, like, I've definitely seen people accidentally spoil stuff, and it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You can see it's about to happen. Two people standing in front of you having a conversation about the same show. One is clearly way ahead on the show than the other, and you can see it about to happen, but you can't stop it. So there are definitely occasions like that, but for the most part, it's like that dude running down the line of people waiting for the last Harry Potter book at a midnight opening, just yelling out "Dumbledore dies."
Spoiler alerts for Harry Potter.
Spoiler alert, but I mean, it's past the point of no return for most people at this point. So I think like just don't be an asshole about it, and just understand like I think the statute of limitations for spoilers will vary from person to person. It obviously varies between the three of us, but like there's definitely a reasonable amount of time in which you should not spoil a major cultural event. Like don't do it the day afterwards, obviously. Maybe give it a few weeks or whatever. It's why like for my topic, I will just like I'm gonna give a spoiler alert, but the game I'm gonna be talking about, God of War, has been out for a year. Like it celebrated its first year anniversary last week, and at that point I feel kind of confident. Like most people who are going to play that game have played it, and we can kind of discuss it relatively openly. It's become a part of the culture. But I think again that statute of limitations probably varies from person to person.
Roy Speedrun says, "This is awesome, PvA. Looking for more podcast-style content on Twitch with either a thumbs up or like a rock-on dude emoji. I can't tell because I have one
Either
eye.
way.
So thank you, Roy Speedrun. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Larry.
I think also the way that we consume stories has sort of changed. I'm still like a small child where I can watch the same thing over and over again and I'm cool with it. But I think most people are like Luke and that they're going to watch it one time and that's enough. And I think that mindset towards stories like makes it harder to, it makes the effect of spoilers more impactful. If you can't derive enjoyment from the story when you know what's coming, then spoilers are going to make it worse. They're going to hit you harder. And I don't mean that as a derogatory. You watch stories the wrong way, Lucas, although you do in many other ways.
Right. And I do many other things wrong.
right. But just there was a time where we didn't have access to the variety of entertainment options that we have now. And like, it was just more common that people would watch the same thing over and over again. And I'm getting that. I read a great article on that, but it's been ages ago, so I don't know who wrote it or anything. But I think that's one component. I think you've both made great points on that front. For me, the biggest issue is when you're dropping spoilers from leaks that have come out before anyone realistically has time to enjoy it. Like that's the worst,
especially for games.
Yeah. And the type of medium, like live TV, I have come down where Luke has, at least in terms of Twitter. Like Twitter's purpose is people enjoying the same event live. And so like I can't fault people for enjoing an event
or arguing
live.
about politics.
Right. But isn't
Twitter's
that also
functions.
enjoying a live train wreck?
Fair enough.
So like different social media platforms, like it matters to me in different ways. Like on Reddit, you can be so careful. Like if I don't want Walking Dead spoilers, I don't go to the Walking Dead subreddit. But even within that, like they have strict moderation on how you're going to be able to come across those spoilers. Facebook is the worst. I hate it in every conceivable way. So whatever, keep spoiling things, Facebookers. You all suck anyway. I didn't mean it.
No, he did.
But just, back when I was watching The Walking Dead, just on Facebook, I was always like, just writing spoiler alert for The Walking Dead would go a really long way toward me not being pissed off at you right now.
Well, my favorite is when people are like, spoiler alert, but they also have just a giant image of what's going to happen, and so you don't see the little spoiler alert, you see the image first and foremost.
I had someone who just kept spoiling things, but then when I talked to him, I was like, hey man, could you like start putting spoiler alert back in the Walking Dead days? And I say that like it's not on the air, but back when I cared about
back when The Walking Dead was good.
yeah. And the person was like, went out of their way to be a jerk about it, and they hadn't read the comics. So I just started sending them images from upcoming episodes. We're not friends anymore. It's okay. We were never real life friends in the first place. I'm all over the place. My point is, where you're talking about it matters. The medium matters. I think like taking some time before you talk about games openly or movies openly makes more sense than live events. But I would also just like to see more online mediums for discussion implement some things similar to what Reddit has, where you have the option to black out spoilers and clearly label them. Like, I think that would be a really cool thing on Twitter. Like, maybe I can write, if people are talking about this specific thing, I don't want to see anything from it. And so everything hashtagged there is blacked out for me or something like that. But I realize that that's a lot of work for me to give someone else for my own personal comfort. And it's a real first world problem.
There are add-ons that I saw. There was an article that I think ran on, maybe it was Polygon, like outlining an add-ons you can add to avoid spoilers for Endgame or Game of Thrones, which I thought was an interesting solution.
Yes.
So, talking statute of limitations really quickly. I think for a video game, for me, it's like 2 months. You know, wait a couple months, because most games that have a story that anybody's going to care about, they're going to be, 20, 30 hours long at max, probably. Mm-hmm. So 2 or 3 months gives people plenty of time. I think for a movie, opening weekend, after opening weekend, everybody who cares about the story, 95% of people who care about Endgame are going to see it opening weekend, right? Like, so go ahead and post shit. Game of Thrones, live tweet that thing with me, all right? Let's do it. It is the last bastion of a way of consuming media. Like The Walking Dead was like that at times too.
It was event viewing.
Yeah, like let's all soak this up together, right? So, and then like Netflix shows and stuff, I don't know. I'm not super sensitive to spoilers on those kinds of things, just because. And all these statute of limitations are in like a digital form, like posting on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. When it comes to being around people, like just ask, like, hey, is everybody who wants to play God of War played God of War, and then spoil it, right? Like,
regardless of their answer.
Regardless of their answer. And don't go talking about major plot points of things at the restaurant like a day after they happen, Like even Game of Thrones, right? So funny story real quick, I'll regale you. I love going to the coffee shop, putting in headphones and not listening to anything except the people that are around me. I just love eavesdropping. So the coffee shop that I go to is owned and run by a guy who's around my age, right? And he like met this girl there one time for a date, and this was a couple years ago at like the height of The Walking Dead. Well, this date was going very poorly for a multitude of reasons. But then they sit down, right, and they're talking, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm a big Walking Dead fan," and he goes, "Spoiler alerts for The Walking Dead, like season 5 or 6 or whatever." He's like, "Oh yeah, I can't believe Glenn died." And she was like, "I have to watch it on Netflix because I don't have cable."
Oh.
So she had no idea that this had happened. And then he like insulted her religion and stuff too. So it was all just overall 2 out of 10 will not do again, but 10 out of 10 for me would listen again. Don't be that guy. Don't talk out loud at a restaurant about the big movie or big TV show you just watched, because somebody may be around you who hasn't seen it and doesn't want it spoiled.
Yep. That's all I've got, man.
All right, awesome.
That's all you got?
Cody, why don't you spoil something for us with your topic?
Yeah, Cody.
All right, so I will say we kind of put this last because it does constitute spoilers for a game that is a year old. So if you haven't played the most recent God of War, I would either stop listening, go finish God of War, because what's wrong with you, play that game, and then come back and listen to this.
Okay.
Yep, just go out, buy a PlayStation, play God of War. So yeah, I feel kind of bad because Larry, you haven't played God of War because you don't have a PlayStation 4.
Dude, I can consume the same story without limit.
It's true. But we're kind of talking about a year-old game because it is a slow news week. But also, GameSpot dropped the first part of an ongoing series called Audio Logs, where they kind of get the creators behind games to come in and kind of walk the audience through how a portion of the game was made, a notable portion of the game.
Which, for the record, on the video here, I'm just kind of rolling the clip of in the background. So,
okay. Oh, awesome. Yeah, and so for this first episode, they got Cory Barlog, the director of God of War and just all around cool guy, to come in and kind of talk about like one of the biggest moments in the most recent God of War, which was Kratos returning home to get the Blades of Chaos, and kind of the lead up to that reveal, and then kind of the ensuing fight that comes afterwards. And so it's a 10-minute video. I hope both of you watched it. If not, it shouldn't be a problem, because I'm kind of just using this as a springboard to talk about what you thought about. I know, Luke, you've played God of War, and we've kind of talked about when it came out. Once we had both kind of finished it, we talked a little bit about this scene and then a number of other scenes, kind of like the oh shit moments in that game. But I kind of want to just use this as a springboard to talk about like the unbelievable amount of hard work it takes in every department to make a moment like this happen. We've talked a lot about kind of like humanizing game development, but I also don't think we talk enough about like the actual just like logistics of making something like this happen. So overall, I guess I don't have any direction for this. Let's just talk about this video and this moment. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, Larry, did you get a chance to watch it?
So I really screwed up and thought I was going to have time at a certain point, and then unforeseen circumstances changed my evening.
It's all right. It's a trade-off because I didn't watch the movie we talked about last week.
Boom.
No, I watched this video because this moment in this game was super impactful to me and so well done because... So for the first half of this game, you have this axe, right? And in the video, he talks about how like they spent 3 to 4 years making this axe feel awesome. And it shows when you play the game. Like there is a weight to the axe when you're playing with it. Like it immediately becomes an iconic video game weapon when you play this game. And this moment in the game is so impactful because at this point, I had forgotten about the Blades of Chaos. Like, not forgetting that they exist, but just the axe is done so well. It's like, well, I don't even need the Blades of Chaos, like because of this. And so when you get there and he opens up the compartment in the floorboard and pulls these out, you get like this rush of nostalgia for the old God of War games, and like you're just reminded of all of the history behind the 6 hours you've played so far through the game. Like and hearing him just talk about like this almost didn't happen. So like they spent 3.5-4 years on the axe itself, with the whole intent being that at some point you were going to get the blades, and then they got to that point and it was like, we may have to cut this because we only have about a year left on this project. And if it took us this long with the axe, how long is it going to take us here? Like, how different would that game have been? How much rework would it have required had that not been able to make its way into the game? And I think, like, with all things production, there's always this tipping point, right? Of like, if we can get it done in this time frame, we can deliver this much. If we go past that, this is all you're getting. And it sounds like that was a real possibility with the development of this game.
Yeah, I think we like to think of, especially these kind of AAA Sony exclusives, as like having unlimited budgets, and they do have massive budgets, but it's still a budget. You have to work within restraints. And I think like that is, to anyone who's played that game, the fact that portion of the game almost didn't exist is absolutely mind-blowing. But I also think what's interesting is at the beginning, like the reason that the kind of the lead up section, which is where his son Atreus rages out and kind of passes out, and he's kind of succumbing to the sickness inside him, which is in many ways the sickness that Kratos has, which is this uncontrollable rage. That moment is like only happened because of they had to cut an entire portion of this game where the sun was being a dick, and they had to condense that into like a much shorter part of the game. So again, this moment in a lot of ways came out of both the ambition of the team, but also the restraint of the team when they had to adjust and adapt to budgetary constraints, logistical constraints, and those, like, the kind of the creative vision and the logistical vision bumping up against each other is the artistic process in summary, pretty much. We like to think about like the artistic process as being this kind of hoity-toity kind of thing, but it's always, art is not separate from commerce, and commerce is not separate from art. Those two things are intrinsically linked, especially in America. And so I think it's cool that to see Cory talks like so candidly about like, yeah, this awesome moment that everybody loves almost didn't happen. I would have loved to see how the team adapted to not including the blades, because that's kind of the culmination and the pivotal climactic moment in Kratos' arc in this game.
Yeah, and coming from a production field, right? So like we do a lot of website development for clients, and it's crazy. Like client will come in and they're like, hey, we want to build this website. What would it cost? And we'll come back and say, it's going to cost $30,000 to make a website with all this different functionality, right? $30,000, like that's a big number. And then they'll come middle of the project and say, hey, we want to add this functionality to the website. And we're like, well, you don't have the budget for that. And they're like, what are you talking about? This website's $30,000. You're saying I don't have budget to add this one tool? And it's like, well, all of that budget is accounted for. And what you're saying is the same here, Cody. Like that doesn't change at scale, right? In fact, it gets worse at scale because you've got all these people who have a different vision for the game. And that's why like Cory Barlog's job is so important. He's like the gatekeeper of the vision for this. And, you know, I'm sure that there are plenty of other ideas. He talks in it about like how in the scene where you're rowing the boat back up to your hut, he wanted to have like, is it Hellwalkers, like at war on the banks, like fighting one another. And, you know, I think to people who don't know anything about game development, like myself, I would think like, oh, well, that's just mocapping a couple dudes doing it, throwing some art on them, and then just dropping them on the hillside there. Like, that doesn't seem like a lot. But it was so... It was going to require so much budget that they were like, we got one little stationary Hellwalker out in the distance, and that conveys the same thing we were hoping to convey with all of that. And that was where another part where he talked like artistically, when it all came together, it showed like it allowed us to focus more on Kratos' journey back. And I thought that was an interesting thing, an interesting point, just because I think while a lot of art is intentionality, a lot of it is also adaptation and just kind of like shoehorning thoughts, right? Like, where it's like, hey, this wasn't the original vision, because the original vision was we wanted a bunch of chaos. And it became, oh, we have this somber moment before unleashing the beast that is the Kratos of the old isometric God of War days.
Yeah, I think the whole video is kind of a testament to the idea that necessity is the mother of invention. I think with unlimited freedom, it can be overwhelming for a lot of creators. And whether or not the constraints of your process are self-imposed or imposed by budget, I do think that ultimately it forces it, at least in this case, certainly forced the team to kind of think about the scene with a bit more restraint and a bit more focus. And it seems like that is, like, you wouldn't think of a God of War game as being defined by restraint. But I think a lot of what people were noting about this most recent God of War is that it is about kind of restraint and attempting to restrain something inside yourself. And I think the fact that the development was also defined in some ways by restraint is notable. Like the way he was talking about, I thought it was interesting because the way he was talking about the performance that Chris Judge was giving in the scene in the hut versus the performance we actually get in the game is notable. He mentioned that Chris Judge was like literally crying through some of the lines he was recording, and they had to re-record them. You don't get any of that, at least directly in that scene. I think he carries the weight of what these blades mean with his shoulders and kind of with his posture, but Kratos isn't a guy who cries. Like it's pretty obvious he's not a dude who cries, but like again, that restraint is powerful. It's as much like the power of that scene comes as much from what Kratos is not expressing and what he's incapable of expressing as what he is expressing and what he unleashes, like you said, once he gets those blades and gets out into the field. I just think like we've talked so much about kind of ambition and kind of the ambitious visions of corporate heads and developers that I think we kind of tend to forget that like some of the best decisions made in games come down to restraint, and that restraint often comes down to something as matter of fact as like, we spent all our budget on animating this deer, and now we can't put all the Hellwalkers into the scene. We have to have one, like you said, one Hellwalker who he mentioned is just in idle pose. He's not even like really moving or anything. I just find that stuff fascinating. Restraint is a very undervalued part of the creative toolbox.
And I also think this video, I've been going back and watching old episodes of the Player 3 podcast, the old show that we used to do just to get flooded by nostalgia. But I think about some of the, like listening back to some of the things that and opinions that I had at the time, like, and understanding now how wrong they were. One opinion that I would throw out constantly was like, and I'm not the only one. We've seen this tossed around in gaming circles for a while now. Just like, well, they had this thing created and then just held it back so that they could piecemeal it out as DLC. And then you watch a video like that and you understand like, there's no time for that.
Yeah.
There's no space for. Okay, well, we created these 4 missions that, at the end of the day, we didn't really need them. We're just going to toss them in as DLC later on. Like, that's not how this works. You're making decisions about deer and, voice performances and like, to bring this out of just the God of War conversation. You saw like the tweets from the Naughty Dog team about rap and shooting on The Last of Us. And, I think a lot of times we see that and we think like, well, there's probably a lot more to go after the motion cap is done. Like, that feels like we're still 2 years out from this game actually coming out, but there's so many pieces moving all at the same time, that it's really hard to judge where a project is and when it's coming out based off of what's going on. And I can only imagine being the guardrails responsible for keeping these things in scope and on track. Like, that's hard enough to do with a $30,000 website. Like, for a multi-million-dollar game is just insane to me.
Yeah, and it's so astounding when something comes out and it feels as though it's driven by a singular vision, even though if you look at any game, it's never truly driven by a singular vision. There might be someone at the top like Cory Barlog or like a Ken Levine kind of guiding that vision, but games, I think, are by default not necessarily in our tours medium, even though we like to think of like Cory Barlog has become the face of this game, but he is noted at every step of all of the acclaim this game has gotten, that it's down to the team and down to the truly massive team that worked on it. It's astounding that anything like this ever comes together when you think about, especially like, I don't want to keep on hammering home. I like the idea of keeping this conversation general, but like the whole concept behind God of War is that it seems as though it's one seamless shot. And so to think about them kind of filming this and creating this like piecemeal and out of order is absolutely astounding when you think about all the work that must have gone into stitching those different portions together to make it seem like it was one scene. Like he mentions the lightning flashes that are kind of warp points during this slow build up to the hut. It's just absolute. Like I think we talked about it when we were talking about the Ubisoft documentary. Like, it's astounding that anything ever gets made of this quality.
Yeah, because I think we think the same thing about movies too, right? That day one of the God of War project, they sat down and they were like, all right, guys, Atreus is in the woods. Opening scene, opening curtain. All right, this team's gonna go motion cap it. This team over here is gonna do the art. This team's gonna develop. Come back tomorrow, scene 2. You know, and that's not how it works.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the same with movies and television. They never shoot linearly because that would be extremely costly.
Yeah. There are literal people on staff on those places for continuity of like,
exactly,
oh no, your hair wasn't like that 3 weeks ago. We're going to have to, when we shot the first 5 seconds of this scene. So, I love this video, and I'm excited to see GameSpot put more stuff out, because if I understand correctly, this is the like debut of this series, right? And they're hoping to do this with other games.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the gaming industry needs more of these glimpses, like playing hard, like audio logs. There's isn't PlayStation putting out a whole documentary about the making of God of War as well?
A multi-part documentary called Raising Kratos. I think they're putting it on their YouTube channel, like they're going to be revealing it piecemeal.
Which I'm sure that one's going to be a little more like it's being made by PlayStation. So there's probably going to be some parameters set on that. But yeah, we need more glimpses into this so that we can have a better appreciation for the art, and so that we can stop saying stupid shit like, oh, they just took those 7 maps out and decided to make them DLC at the end. Like, yeah, just being completely uninformed.
Yeah. That's all I got. Any thoughts, Larry?
Something that keeps coming to mind as you guys are talking, I just think about how gamers often respond to this stuff without thinking about what's going on behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And it throws me back to the accounts that rose to popularity last year for exposure, where artists would post screenshots of their engagements with people who thought that their expectations for getting paid for their products were unrealistic. Mm-hmm. And just how little art is actually valued, and there's just this common, well, you should do that for me. It's easy, and I loved the ones where the artists be like, all right, well then just do it yourself if it's so easy.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of fold in another story from this week into this, because there was a story about the working conditions at Epic, and like the massive crunch that team is pretty much always under, because that game is just constantly in development. And you can read all about that over on Polygon. I'm not going to hash everything out that's in it, but I think we need, and we've talked a lot about, we need more exposés into like how development teams are treated. But I do think outside, I'm bringing that up more so to talk about just the way that Epic goes about putting features into their games. And like, I think when we see like Apex Legends come out, it has a ping system, and then all of a sudden we have a ping system in Fortnite like a week later. I think when we see things like that, it does more harm than good for our perception of how these things come together, mm-hmm. right? Because we start equating a singular feature with the development of a section of a game or a map or, you know, a DLC mission or something like that. It's where it's like, well, they threw together that thing in 3 days and had it out, or a week and had it out, you know, and yeah, we just kind of, we equate that with larger things in game development, and we think that it's just as easy. I don't know if I necessarily have a question to go off of that. I just think that it's something to be aware of, that like, while we can have criticism of things like that where it's clear that they just took an idea and shoehorned it in as quickly as possible, that I think that's more so the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, it also certainly doesn't help that it's like one of the most high profile games out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Great show, guys.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Let's move into everybody's favorite game that we play at the end of this podcast. Two Truths and a Lie Gaming Edition. All right.
That
Guys.
a new title?
Huh?
That a new title?
It's always a new title. So the way this game works, guys, I have a game that this one's pretty obscure. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And I have 3 statements. 2 of them are facts. One of them is a lie. You have to suss out which one is the lie. Let's go to the scoreboard.
Do we have to?
Yeah, we do. Leading this game is me with 6 points. How do I get points, you say? Well, if I read all 3 statements and neither of these bozos can figure out which one is the lie, I get a point.
Bozos, I'm winning this week.
Then Cody has 3 points.
Catching up.
And then Larry, hold on, let me zoom in. I can't really see this number. It's so small. Oh, because it doesn't exist. He doesn't have any points. All right. You guys ready for this week's game? Any questions about the rules?
No.
All right.
Can you give me 6 points?
You know what? Just because you asked, why not?
Yes.
7?
Sure. All right. This week's game, Mortal Kombat 2. Little fighting game, kind of obscure.
That was on the Sega, right?
Little indie game. Yeah. The best version was on the Sega too, because it had the blood. So the Nintendo version did not. Or it had green or blue blood or something like that.
That changes everything.
It had blue blood, because I almost included that as a fact. All right. All right, here we go. Here are 3 statements. Number 1. In order to stay true to its gory nature, Midway hired blood spatter analyst Herbert Leon McDonnell to consult on all of their blood animations. Number 2. Kintaro was originally designed to be a playable anthropomorphic tiger. However, he was changed to a Shokin like Goro due to the difficulty in creating a fur-lined costume. Number 3. By playing 250 matches in a row on the arcade edition, the players unlock the ability to play a round of Pong in the middle of the match. The game lasts until one player gets 7 points before throwing both players back into the match. All right. So we've got the Gore, we have the Kintara design, and we have Pong. Larry, we're going to start with you this week. Which one of these is the gaming lie?
I didn't see this, but the Kintaro design. So I watched a thing like showing the costumes, doing the mocap for the game. Cause up until this week, I didn't actually realize that that they filmed real people to make the people in Mortal Kombat. That was pretty neat. So I'm gonna guess that one, cause it seems like something you would. I messed my own brain up. I'm gonna guess that one though.
All right, Codsworth.
I'll guess the blood splatter doctor, whatever. Herbert.
Leon McDonnell.
Yeah.
Any reason you're picking that one?
No, I know nothing about Mortal Kombat, so this is more just a wild guess. I'm flailing around here.
All right. Well, we have somebody who made it on the board this week.
Hey.
Just kidding. Cody gets the point. He's correct.
Yes.
For the
Catch him
record,
back up.
For the record, Herbert Leon McDonnell is a blood spatter specialist who would have been relevant at the time because he is most known for being the first professor of a blood spatter analyst class back in the late 70s. So he'd still been around early 90s to consult on this game. But yes, on the arcade cabinet for Mortal Kombat 2, if you play 250 matches in a row, you get Pong, and every time somebody scores a point, you get a toasty that plays. So, all right, so update on the scoreboard for the game. Cody is within 2 points of me, within spitting distance, as some would say.
Don't call it a comeback.
Cody has 4. Larry, his comeback is yet to begin, but it will be here soon with 0 points. All right, guys. Who are you? Where can we find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week? Larry, let's start with you.
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LarryHunt. and you can find me tweeting spoilers on everything.
For Infinity War. All right, Cody.
I'm Cody. You can find me at Pro Electioneer on Twitter. I will only be spoiling Endgame, but only the second third of the movie. Not the first third and not the last third, just the middle of the movie.
Nice. All right. Well, my name is Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at Hoagie_OW. I will also be tweeting spoilers for Endgame this week, but I will not have seen Endgame. So, all right, guys. This has been PvA Radio. We thank you for tuning in live over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio at 9:30 on Wednesdays. If you can't catch us live, you can find us on podcast services everywhere. Remember, if you have a question you would like us to answer on the show, we are reopening PvAQ. Just go to playerversus.com/PvAQ, fill out the form, and then you are entered for a chance to win a $20 PSN, Xbox Live, Steam, or Nintendo eShop gift card. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you guys. Great show this week, as always. Larry, be better next week, all right? This has been PvA Radio. We love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Would you like me to go that shortwave radio?